Welcome to the Hey Docs podcast with your host, Jill Allen. Today I am joined by Rob Montgomery, the founder of the law offices of Rob Montgomery, or you may know him as your dental lawyer, one of the most trusted legal voices in the dental and orthodontic world. Rob has worked with hundreds of doctors through practice startups, acquisitions, partnerships, and everything in between. In today's episode, we're covering the legal blind spots every young orthodontist should be aware of. From lease negotiations to associate contracts, this conversation is packed with practical advice to help protect your future and avoid costly mistakes. Let's get into it.
This episode was brought to you by ADEC. Are you thinking about opening an orthodontic practice? I know, it's a big decision, but saving 25% on the ADEC equipment you need to get started, that's an easy one. Because ADEC has a special program called Smart Start, designed to help you launch your first practice. You get up to 25% off your ADEC orthodontic equipment and furniture. You also get complimentary services to help you run and grow your business. And my favorite part, access to the Smart Start pricing for 2 whole years after you open your doors. That gives you flexibility to add more chairs as your cash flow grows. It's pretty smart. As an orthodontist, you care about getting all the little details right, and ADEC really got it right with this program. So if starting off with a big savings on ADEC equipment sounds good to you, the ADEC Smart Start is definitely worth a closer look. Just follow the link in the show notes to learn more.
Rob, I am so excited to have you on Hey Docs today with me. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Jill. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, I have been waiting a long time for you to be on the show. And I know we've known each other through correspondence and whatnot through the years, and it's just a real privilege. So thanks again for being here.
Yeah, it's great. And as we chatted about before, we've actually met in person, which is, I'm a podcaster too. We have lots of guests that I have never met and probably will never be in the room with. So It was awesome to be able to share some stories and connect with you in person when you're in Philadelphia not too long ago.
Yes, absolutely. So before we dive in, I am wondering if, for anybody who doesn't know who you are, which would be shocking to me, but in the event that they don't, could you tell us a little bit about you, about your background, and how you ended up focusing on legal work in the dental and orthodontic space?
Sure. Yeah. I have been practicing law for 30 years. I've had my firm for 28. And during that time, I've always represented dentists. My first client when I was working for the firm before I was on my own was a general dentist that had 11 or 12 locations. And I did a lot of work for him. And then when he had left that firm where I worked and I started my firm and he found me and we continued to work together. And they had people that left him and spun off and did different things. And next thing I'm linked in with bankers, consultants, CPAs, brokers, and the dental space is a very close-knit group. And over literally the last 12-ish years, it's become the exclusive focus of our practice. We represent some veterinarians, but probably about 5% of our clients. Most of what we're doing is helping dentists, and the majority of our clients are people that we're helping transition into practice ownership for the first time through startups, acquisitions, buy-ins. And I have a great team of really experienced lawyers who help support the real estate aspect of things, the employment, the M&A, the corporate stuff. And we all have a passion for helping young professionals transition into ownership. And it's a fun time. It's an exciting time to help people at what is the most impactful business decision and project of their professional career.
Yes, for sure. And I know you and I've talked a lot about this, both of us having that real passion for startup doctors. It is just, and I know we would agree on this, so critical that probably one of the biggest things you're going to do is start up a practice or go into a purchase or acquisition component. And I think that using and utilizing somebody like yourself is so key, because this is probably, I would say, in most doctors' careers, probably one of the biggest binding contracts that they're going to get into is, either when they're looking at a lease or looking at partnership agreements or whatnot. And I'm wondering if you can just talk to us a little bit about, if you could just, you got the ear of a lot of young docs that are
Yeah.
listening right now, but what are some things that you see pretty consistently that you think that they really need to be paying attention to before they're signing a lease, when they're getting into some of these deals, and just some of those common red flags that should make somebody go, maybe this isn't such a good deal, or maybe I'm being pushed along a little faster than I should be, and I should be paying attention to some of these red flags that are starting to come out there.
Yeah, I think just overall, from a holistic standpoint, before we get into some specific examples, I think it's just the mindset that they should really adopt. Most young professionals have gotten to this point of their lives and career where they've never had to deal with kind of, we'll call them a grown-up contract. Had car leases for a Subaru, an apartment lease, a rental agreement. Those agreements are they're forms of sorts. There are consumer protection laws that protect them in those. And there's not a whole lot that can go wrong in those. I joke that not even a psychopath lawyer sits in the car dealer and reads the lease agreement for the Honda that they're about to lease. 6 pages of whatever, 4-point font, 2-sided with columns. And that's okay. Like it works out all right. But they have to realize that it's time to flip the switch. That now these are, as I said, grown-up contracts, impactful contracts that can and will define how and where they practice. They'll define their ability to be a practice owner. And the only way to navigate those is to get help. And it's easy. We're talking about professionals. These are highly educated people. Yep. They can read an agreement without a doubt. And frankly, now you can run these contracts through AI and they'll tell you what it says. But that doesn't get you all the way there. You need to have an understanding and fully appreciate all the ramifications of what you're going to do. And it's a personal thing too, Jill. And just like with you, with your consulting clients, you can't just say, here, this is the right answer and the right thing for everybody.
Right, exactly.
And if that were the case, like our jobs would be really boring.
That's the truth.
Everybody's got a different thing. Now, somebody might say, I'm about to sign an employment agreement and I'm in downtown Austin, Texas. I'm an orthodontist. It's got a 5-mile non-compete. And that person might say, but my significant other is in a residency program. She's going to match, and we're probably going to move someplace to the East Coast. I don't care about a 5-mile non-compete. Doesn't matter for them, right? Somebody else might say, I want to do this ortho startup in downtown Austin, and I've got this employment agreement, and it's downtown Austin, and it's 3 blocks from my uncle, who's a pediatric dentist. And my vision is to open this ortho practice that he'll be able to refer to me. And then now all of a sudden, that 5-mile non-compete in Austin, that matters, right? Yep. And so that's an easy example. Same contract, different outcomes, different needs for those two orthodontists. So it's really getting help to understand these agreements. When I speak to young dental students or residents, I refer to this as contractual awareness. Situational awareness is a term we all know. You pay attention to what's going on around you when you're walking down the street. Same thing, contractual awareness, understanding what's in the agreement, what it says, what you have to do, what the other side has to do, and understanding what impact that's going to have. And that's where counseling and consulting comes in. So just overall, it's just so important to leverage the experience of somebody that's seen this stuff.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And again, I like what you said and how you said it, in the sense that many times, most of the doctors that you and I are working with, they've been through smaller agreements when we are looking at, especially whether it's an employment agreement or these lease agreements, we're talking a minimum of a 10-year binding agreement. A lot of times on these lease agreements with 3 and 5 year options, that's going to tie up potentially most of your career. And if you've signed into a bad agreement and something goes wrong, gosh, you don't think that that could happen, but if it does, it can really impact you a lot. And I'd love to, if you don't mind, just talking about that a little bit in regard to digging into the weeds a little bit of let's talk about leases, things that they should be aware of.
Yeah, I think there's really two kind of categories of that need to be addressed in a good lease, especially for a startup. One is the approach that you need to take. Leases, especially commercial leases, and now many of our clients are in retail spaces, which retail leases are very onerous. They're very one-sided in favor of them. Period.
Yes.
You get, it's not like a mom and pop where you get a decent 15, 20 page lease. There's some stuff and you make some changes and good to go. These are properties that are owned by institutional investors. You get an 80-page lease, and it's got 8 pages about assignment in it alone. And generally in documents like that, the longer they are, the more bad stuff that's in there for the tenant. But so they are one-sided. There's nothing we can do to change that. We can't go in and say, okay, let's make this lease even for the landlord and the tenant, because it's a fool's errand. We won't succeed. It'll cost a ton of money and it's take too long to do. But the way we look at it is it's about protecting the investment. So a lot of these startup dentists are borrowing somewhere in the ballpark of $750,000 for a startup project. And they're doing it in a space in real estate that they don't own. And that's okay. It's a good business model. It works. But what they need to be careful about is making sure that there's nothing that could happen that could cause them to accidentally breach or default, or something that could lead to them not having that office anymore. And while that $750,000 or so loan is for lots of things, the main thing is building that office out and the goodwill that goes with that. So really focusing on those sort of gotchas. Obviously, common sense. If you don't pay the rent on time, you're not going to be there. Everybody should know that. But it's all the other stuff that's hidden in there. And that's where we go and dig and mine for the problems so that they don't become problems. The other thing is there's some practical terms and things that we do want to see and or don't want to see. So tagging on to the theme of protecting the investment in that location, we don't like to see relocation provisions. So somewhat
That's
counterintuitive.
a great one. Yes, it's a great one.
Hey, I got the end cap in this space. I'm next to a big grocery store. This is great. Most commercial leases, especially retail leases, will give the landlord the right to relocate the tenant. So you don't want that in your lease. If you end up with it for some reason, there are workarounds. There are things that you can do to make it so that it's so unfavorable for the landlord to do that. But I've seen clients go through that. They were not our clients when they signed the lease, and it can be a painful thing.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
That's a big one. The other thing is that we get into the weeds with our lease assignment and how that relates to the sale of the practice and the personal guarantee. Most leases, especially because most of these landlords are giving tenant improvement allowance, which is, folks that don't know what that is, that's the landlord writing a check to you to help with the construction costs of your leased space. So the landlord's paying money to help you build out your orthodontic office. They want to make sure that you just don't build it out and say, you know what, I think maybe now I want to go to law school. And this whole dentistry thing, and just walk away. They okay, we paid you $80,000 in tenant improvement allowance. We signed this. We want a personal guarantee, and it's reasonable. We always try to negotiate those to limit them in terms of the amount and the time period. But where that becomes especially tricky is how it relates to the assignment of the lease. And when I'm talking about assignment, when the day comes that you're going to sell the practice, which is going to happen, it's either in the distant future when you're ready to retire, or if something happens that you become sick, disabled, or you have some sort of change in life circumstance that you need to sell sooner, your ability to recoup the full value of that practice is going to depend on your ability to transfer the lease to the buyer. And so for us, we want language in our leases that give the landlord as little say as possible in that transaction. Because as I said at the outset, Jill, we do a lot of practice acquisitions too in our office. The number one deal killer in a practice sale is an uncooperative landlord. And the case where there's a lease that says you won't assign the lease without the landlord's consent. Sometimes they'll say, which shall not be unreasonably withheld, which is like unreasonably withheld. That's the legal punting. Like what Jill Allen thinks is unreasonable is one thing. What Rob Montgomery thinks is unreasonable, what the landlord thinks, and what Judge Smith, who's hearing the case ultimately about the deal that died because of the uncooperative landlord, what they think is also a different thing. But there's so much value associated with the location, the goodwill in that space, that you need to be able to deliver that, and you want to have as much latitude. And when you do it, you also want to make sure that your personal guarantee goes away.
Yes. Oh, that's a big one. Oh, that's such a big one.
I've seen it, Jill. Where we've had like
Me too.
3 generations of practice owners where one defaulted and the landlord sued the current tenant, the person that sold them the practice, and the person that sold them the practice. I liken it to, it's like going to happy hour and leaving your credit card at the bar and going home and telling everybody to behave. You don't do that, right? Don't stay on personal guarantees when you're not the practice owner.
Oh, I love those 2 points that you brought up and how you finished that up there, because those are both areas that I see many of my doctors. Either I've seen it in the past where somebody has gotten stuck in one of those situations, or again, having somebody who's maybe not as qualified as they should be reviewing these leases and leaving things in that could be very detrimental. And I think just the point itself about, like, for instance, the landlord being able to move your space. And what I want to tell docs that are listening is, if you think about, we're taking out almost $1 million loan at this point, 2025, for a startup orthodontic office. You're building your practice out at about 200, 225, maybe even upwards of 250 a square foot, and you're building out a 2,500 square foot space. You can really quickly do that math and think about, if 5 years in, the landlord comes to you and says, hey, now I want you to move that space. They're not going to give you all that money to go rebuild out your new space again. And so if you did not think about that, if you did not have somebody that caught that for you, that could be a major deal, even if you're going to court to try and see if you can salvage not having to move. And I know, Rob, you could talk about that. Like, it seems so little. This is why I advocate so much when I'm working with my clients that we are getting a lawyer involved that understands contractual law, and it's not just our friends or families out there. For anybody who's listening, is, I've got a family member and they do some family law and I think they'll be fine. Or I've got a family member that's in real estate and they've seen a lot of contracts. I think they'll be okay. These are big deals, the 2 points that you pointed out. And there's lots of other ones out there, but I think those are 2 ones that don't seem very harmless, but are actually can really be pretty detrimental to a doc.
Yeah, and they're not entirely intuitive. And we've seen situations where people have worked with lawyers or other consultants that don't really understand the dental space well enough for these issues. And they'll say, there's a provision in there that says if you don't like the space that we're proposing to relocate you to, you can just terminate the lease. That seems fine, right? No, who's paying the bank? There's a loan still. Like, once they're in here, you can't go anywhere. You're stuck. And so it's just not understanding. And so a lot of what we do, Jill, is not necessarily all legal either. It's like the intersection of legal and business, understanding the business of dentistry and startups and purchases and all that stuff, and where the pitfalls are. And that, but you've been doing this for a long time, and so have I. That's where experience comes in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a good transition spot into the next thing that I wanted to talk to. And you finished up your last thought on this in regard to associateships. And I think that this is another area. I do a lot of startups and I work with a lot of doctors who are looking at doing associateship agreements while they're either doing their startup or they're doing an associate agreement, hoping that it turns into a partnership opportunity or whatnot. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about just again some of the you talked about non-competes, and I think we all know that you really need to be, even though it doesn't seem important now, you do need to be thinking about what's your 3 year, your 5 year, your 10 year plan
Mhm.
before you sign into a contract like that. But are there any other areas that you think docs should really be paying attention to protect themselves when they're in this interim stage of either hoping or waiting for partnership, or maybe just a placeholder until they've made a decision on what direction they're going with the next phase of their career?
Yeah, I think partnerships themselves are just that's tricky, and I want to talk about that in a minute. And
Yeah.
I think some of the things that like that, and it's really specific to ortho that we see
Mhm.
are provisions that in associate agreements that require the orthodontist to complete all of the treatment that they've begun when they leave. That's a very innocuous thing for a general dentist or a periodontist or an
Mhm. Mhm.
endodontist. No big deal. But for an orthodontist, it's real. And we see that a lot, especially in DSO practices in that universe. Two things with that where you've got that type of provision, and then you also have provisions that maybe require 90 or 120 or 180 days notice to be able to terminate the agreement. It's just too much time, like for a variety of reasons. One is if you've got the opportunity to buy a practice or do a startup, you can't always say to the landlord, it's a little easier in a startup. It's worse in an acquisition. Hang on, wait, I'll be back in 6 months. Can you just put that deal on delay? This thing that I got to give a
Mhm.
half a year's notice to my employer. Not to mention, for those of us that are out there in the business world and have experienced life, nobody wants to give notice 6 months in advance of their departure from a job. Like I can't even imagine
Right.
how horrible that is. So that's something that just overall, I think orthodontists need to be mindful of. That's really specific to their specialty. I think buy-ins and partnerships are really tricky. Just generally, you got to be really careful with those. And I think the greatest risk and the riskiest transaction that we see in our dental legal world is the practice buy-in, the partnership.
Yes.
And because there's just so many variables with that. What is it worth? What is the cash flow? How is it structured? What say do you have? And unlike a purchase agreement, asset purchase agreement where you buy the practice and that's it, that document goes away.
Mm.
As with leases, partnership agreements, similarly, are the gift that will keep giving for as long
Mm.
as you are a partner. And so getting that, having the ability to buy, make sure you have the ability to buy a controlling interest. But so much of that too is really economic driven. I like to tell people that we can do the greatest bit of legal work known to the world, but we can't make a bad deal good for anything that we do. And what's a bad
Yes.
deal? Whether you're talking about leases, real estate acquisitions, partnerships, buy-ins, it's just the economics aren't good. And so it's
Mhm.
so important to work with the right people, to work with the right team, to understand the cash flow of what you're doing and what are the ramifications. People focus on that valuation. Is it worth 700? Is it worth 900? It's 800. No, like how much money are you going to make after you borrow that, provide clinical dental services and split the profit? That's the
Yeah.
number that matters. And with that, you just have to have a good financial team behind you. But what we've really seen crop up in the last 2 years, and now I'll tell you, now recently we've seen a even worse variant of it. This is like a contagion. These things like they start
Mhm.
bad and then they get worse. Thanks to our private equity friends, is these minority buy-ins in a single location of a larger DSO. Rarely are they good for the dentist. That is nothing more than an employee retention strategy for that DSO. And
Mm.
they want you to pay to be basically chained to the practice. They make it so it's very difficult to leave. There are financial penalties if you do. And ultimately, it's not the same thing as owning a practice. It's not the same thing as
Mhm.
partnering with other orthodontists. It's not the same. It's just like working for the DSO, except that you've plunked down money. And then what we've seen recently, because the clever people in that space realize that, hey, let's get the young orthodontist to borrow $750,000 to do a startup and then we'll become their 40% partner. But
Yes.
we're going to help them, teach them all they need to know about running a dental practice. And I say to those people, you're an orthodontist, you can hire Jill Allen to help you do that. And Jill Allen is not going to take 40% of your business and leave you with all the
Exactly.
risk. There are people that can help you to do that and right. You don't need some private equity person who's got an investment in a chain of steakhouses in Oklahoma and Texas, a uniform supply business in Minnesota and Wisconsin, who owns a bunch of orthodontic practices in the Midwest, like telling you and teaching you how to be a practice owner.
Yeah.
Certainly not for that kind of equity.
Yeah. No, I think that's such a great point.
And now, a word from the sponsors who make this podcast possible. Hey, docs. If you want to have a great business, the right practice management software is essential. But some can be slow, outdated, and lacking good support. That's why I recommend Greyfinch to all orthodontists. It's the fastest, most reliable, and most secure platform to grow your business and improve your efficiency. It's completely web-based, so you can run your entire practice anywhere and from any device with no servers, no downloads, or hidden fees. They even have the most helpful and responsive support team around. Right now, Greyfinch is giving a $500 discount to our listeners. Visit greyfinch.com/Jill Allen to learn more and see why it's one of the fastest growing providers in America. Hey docs, let's talk about Smile Suite, because it's not just another scheduling system. It's a game changer in the world of new patient management. And as a proud Smile Suite partner, I've witnessed the incredible impact it has on practices of all sizes. Smile Suite means your new patient calls and web leads are expertly handled 7 days a week, even during nights and weekends. And they offer top-notch customizable presentation software and seamless post-consultation follow-up. It's like having a secret weapon for your practice's success. Curious? Dive into the revolution at GetSmileSuite.com. And don't forget to mention Hey Docs to unlock some extra goodies. Elevate your practice with Smile Suite, because every smile deserves a suite of excellence.
And just even the things that you're talking about there in regard to, I think docs just have to be so careful. And I think a lot of times there's really good salespeople on the front end of some of these deals. And it's hard to believe that there could be ulterior motives that are going on, or that maybe everything isn't as upfront as you would think it is. And I think a lot of times, especially for a lot of my younger docs that are coming out of school and the world is their oyster and they just want to come out and get going, and gosh, I've got this great opportunity and this sounds great, and oh, this money sounds good, but not having the right counsel through those agreements those are the same docs that I'm talking to 3, 4, 5 years later, and they're burnt and they're bitter and they're frustrated, and they're like, I don't even know what to do. And I think it all comes back to slowing that excitement. And even though it may cost you money to pay to bring on legal counsel and to have somebody advocate for you, it may in the long run be the best money you ever spent if something does go wrong and you're having now to deal with a contract that you know is negotiated well, or that was not well, and you're stuck.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I think that's a misconception. Two things. And you're absolutely right, Jill. Like, these people that are hawking these opportunities, they are professional salespeople that they're selling these partnership opportunities, we'll call them. For listener, just give that air quotes. So the opportunity. And it's the same people that are also recruiting out of dental schools and residency programs. They are professionals. What they are trained to sell things. And in this case, it is a partnership or an associateship. You have to see through that. And I think people sometimes don't realize, like, part of what we as lawyers do are to negotiate things, but more so even what we do is to help people understand what they're about to do. And that's where the contractual awareness, you have contractual awareness because you're working with somebody that explains this, flags the potential issues. A lot of times with those deals, people will call us. We have a different workflow for those. If somebody says, I'm going to go and partner with another orthodontist, I'm buying out a retiring partner, and I'm going to partner with a younger ortho. Okay, let's go. Let's work on the deal and get it done. Somebody says, I'm going to own a 10% interest in this one location of a national ortho DSO. We say, okay, we'll review what is probably 200 pages of documents. It's going to take us about 3 hours to do that. And then we're going to schedule a call with you, and it's going to take about 45 minutes to an hour. And then if you decide that you still want to proceed, we'll talk about what that looks like. 9 times out of 10, that the deal's dead at that point. Because for the first time, they've got somebody who's looking out for their best interest, who's telling them what's actually in these documents and what the ramifications are and what the potential pitfalls are. Unlike the salesperson that they've been talking to all along, who has told them that this is the greatest thing that has ever happened to them in their life.
Rainbows, and you might even see a unicorn at the end. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's it. And so sometimes people, some of these groups will sometimes tell people, like, this is not negotiable. And they think, if I can't negotiate it, I don't need a lawyer. No, that's when you absolutely need a lawyer. We need to tell you what it is you're about to sign without negotiating. That's the most important part of our job. Yes. And so that's a big misconception out there. But and like you said, it's just people are excited to own. And I think they need to understand that's not truly ownership. We joke here that there are partnerships spelled the way partnerships are spelled. And then there are these things which are spelled PARNASIPZZZZZ. It looks and sounds like a partnership, but it's not.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great. I would like to circle back, if you don't mind. I made a note here. I want to circle back to the more traditional associateship agreements that could lead into partnerships. And I see and talk to a lot of docs that kind of get led into this, kind of have the partnership carrot held out there while somebody is signing an associateship agreement, but there's never anything that's really written into anything. And I'm wondering if you can give us just any insight or things that maybe would help a doc move their way through that, or maybe solidify that I at least want to know that at the end of my 4 years, we are going somewhere, or at the end of these 3 years. Because I'll tell you, and I know, Rob, you've talked to him too. Man, I get a lot of docs that they're like, they promised me this, they told me this, I worked my 4 years, I went ahead and signed the non-compete. And then the doc said, oh, you know what, I decided I'm going to sell to a DSO. Or, I decided I'm not ready to retire yet. I'm going to work another 10 years. And I'm just not making enough money with you here. I'm wondering if you can speak to that scenario. And do docs have any recourse? Is there anything they can do to help protect themselves without that solid, for sure, here's your path to partnership that we're talking about right in the beginning?
Yeah, it's a great question. And unfortunately, Jill, there's not realistically a great solution to that problem. Most associate agreements have language in there, if they're talking about partnership agreements, that say after 3 years or 4 years, if the parties like each other, they may decide to possibly explore the potential of maybe sitting down to think about maybe doing a deal together sometime in the near future. And people sometimes will send us those contracts and say, it's got the right for me to buy in 3 years. No, it doesn't.
Yes.
So sometimes we will see, and we've done this for practice owners who are bringing associates on as partners. Sometimes we'll see a letter of intent, again, not binding. You might say after a certain period of time, the parties agree that they're going to pursue partnership. This is the valuation, or this is how we're going to determine the valuation. This is how the partnership's going to work. It shows a little bit more commitment and investment from the practice. Not binding, but still not a contract, but it's a little farther. It's a little bigger commitment. You got the ring now. You're not married yet, but
Haven't
this
picked the day,
person,
but yeah.
yes. So it's a bigger commitment. So that just shows that they're serious about it and they've thought about it. Because a lot of times partnership stuff and actually even associateship, where I see the biggest pain point in these, where there's failure, is where the practice owner, the employer slash future partner seller, is not realistic or doesn't understand the economics of what they're doing. I want to hire an associate, work less, make more. I want to have a partner, sell my half of the practice, work less, make more. Doesn't work that way. I shouldn't say that. Very rarely does it work that way. And if that person is forced to actually do the homework that they should have done in the first place before they made these promises, that's a good exercise for them, because you want them to work with their team, with their accountant, with their lawyer, to work on this LOI to say, what does the cash flow projection look like to me? I understand I'm going to work less. I'm going to make a little less, but I'm cool with that. I understand what I'm signing myself up for. Because where they don't go through that exercise and they string along the associate, while all the while where the practice owner is essentially taking what's behind door number 2, when they find out, when they actually start to look at it 3 years later, wow, this stinks. If you would have thought about this 3 years ago, you would have known that it was going to be exactly like this. Nothing has changed. So I think that's a good tool. I think it's probably not something that we see most of the time, unfortunately. I think, Jill, it's just about being realistic and keeping your eyes open. And if somebody tells you 4 years, maybe that's too long. And if it's 3 years, then look, after 2 years, I'm going to talk about getting this thing valued. And if it's 6 months go by and they haven't done it, maybe that's when time to start talking to somebody about doing a startup or working someplace else. And where I've seen people get in the most trouble is where they've just keep believing. It's like the Journey song. Don't stop believing. Just keep on believing until it's like you've been there for 7 years. Like at what point do you realize that you've been suckered here? And almost when that happens, I almost don't even blame the practice owner. It's like anybody that allows themselves to be string along for that long. It's like, okay, you didn't have your eye on the ball. So that's not legal. There's no contract for that. I think it's just about, again, being realistic, having your eyes open and seeing it for what it is. And that keeps coming back. That's where you work with consultants and other people, CPAs, consultants, lawyers, who say, they've been telling you what? For how long? You got a problem. And so when you're just on that island with that other dentist and you're listening to them all the time and it seems okay and it all seems make sense. There's always a good reason and a good explanation, but you need that outside person to give you a little dose of reality sometimes.
Yes. Oh, that's great. And thanks for unpacking that a little bit, because I am sure there's somebody in the audience that's listening right now that's, oh, I think that's me. He just called me out. And maybe it is time that I am just seeing the spade for what it is, seeing it for what it is and saying, all right, let's move on and take that next step, whatever that may be. So as we are starting to finish up here, I would love to know, you've been giving us just really good advice this whole time and talking to some, I think, really good pain points that I see docs come into as they're moving into looking at contracts and whatnot. But is there any advice that you would give younger doctors and be like, man, I wish that they would have understood this sooner, or gosh, I think this would have been so helpful, and all the docs I've worked with, that they would have known this? Do you have any little pearls there for us?
Yeah, I guess somewhat. All the stuff that we talked about obviously is important in setting yourself up for success with the associate agreement, with the non-compete, not stymieing yourself with bad partnerships, all those things. But I think ultimately what I would say to, especially now, here we are in 2025 recording this, there is a proliferation of DSOs and corporate owners. And I think there's a sort of and there's good salespeople. They're selling these partnerships, they're selling these associateships. They're also, unfortunately, very involved in dental schools as well. And I feel like there's this just bad thing floating out there that, hey, we're all going to have to work for DSOs. Like, that's the future. The only way I'll be able to practice is working as an associate in a DSO, because I can't possibly compete against them. And I don't have those opportunities. And that's just not true.
Mm-hmm.
We still have great opportunities for entrepreneurial dentists. I think owning your professional practice is the ultimate as a professional. I did my startup 28 years ago, and every day has just been rainbows and unicorns. Joel, no, that's not true. There's nothing better than being able to practice the type of practice that you want, where you want, when you want, with whom you want, the types of patients, your team. That's something that you just don't get as an employee. You certainly don't get as an employee of a DSO. And banks are willing to make loans for acquisitions, for buy-ins, and most importantly, for startups. And that really allows dentists to be entrepreneurs. And if you're going to do those things, you can, and you can succeed. You still need help. You still need a good team. And if you do the right thing with the right people, you can have a very successful practice. And again, as a professional, there's nothing more rewarding than that. What I would say ultimately is pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Like DSOs have not taken over the world. You can still be a practice owner and enjoy all of the benefits, occasional headaches that comes along with that.
Yeah, that's great. And thanks for saying that. And I do think it can be so easy to get sucked into that chatter or that banter out there in the groups or in the different gatherings or whatnot. And I echo the same thing. I've been doing my consulting business for over 19 years now and focusing on startups. And year after year, we continue to have very successful, healthy startups. And it's so much fun now. I'm like the grandma in the industry where I can be like, 19 years ago, that little baby was a brand new practice. And now look at where they're at. They've sold, they're selling, or it's so much fun. And I would just encourage anybody who's out there listening and thinking, can I do it? Should I do it? If your goal is ownership, the opportunities are there. You have to do your work and you have to do your homework. And it's hard for any of us that own a business, doesn't matter what it is. There's hard work and there's what all of you like to hear me say, the unsexy side of the business that none of us want to have to do that just goes along with doing business, but you can absolutely do it. And I agree with you. The right team, right foundation in the beginning is really what I think helps set you up for success. So great little pearl there. So as we finish up, I know you and I could just talk, and I'll definitely have to have you on again, and we'll hit some other good topics. But if somebody, Rob, wants to find out about you or the group, your dental lawyer, your group, your dental lawyer, what's going to be the best way that they can do that? Or hear your podcast for that matter?
Sure, yeah. The URL for our firm is yourdentallawyer.com. Firm name's the law offices of Robert Montgomery or Robert Montgomery PC. Kind of funny, Jill, in the world we live in. I've been doing this for 30 years, and I guess about 12, 15 years ago, I got that URL. Everybody's like, oh, you're an expert because I got this website. Like, I knew what I was doing before I got this website, but sure. Yeah, yourdentallawyer.com. We've got resources on there, webinars, blog stuff, links to our podcasts. And if you have questions, there's a place for you to go submit a form there. And then I do a podcast with my friend and amigo, Dr. Paul Goodman, Dental Nachos fame, who's also a Philadelphia dentist. And he and I have been collaborating on CE and presentations and things for, I think it's 15-ish years now. And we call that the Dental Amigos. And I forget how many podcast episodes we have, probably like around 200 or so. And we've been doing this for 6 or 7 years. I'm losing track of time. Pre-COVID for a while is what I'll say when we started. And we have a lot of fun with that as well.
Yeah, you guys do great. Thank you so much for just giving us such good information. And you are definitely somebody I send clients to when they're like, okay, Jill, we're at a point. It's time to bring in a lawyer to review our leases. You and your team have always done such a good job. So thank you for that and for just helping keep the doctors out there safe as they are making their way sometimes through their very first really big contract, big binding business contract. Thank you for all you've been doing here.
No, thank you so much for having me today. And thank you for your trust in me and my team. And we love working with your clients, Jill.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Rob, you know how I like to finish this off? I like to finish off Hey Docs with a little speed round. Are you ready for a couple speed round questions?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. What is one business trend you think more people should be paying attention to?
let's just say social media marketing. As
Yep.
much as people are paying attention to it, I don't think you can pay attention to it too much.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. All right. How about the next one? What is the most unexpected lesson you've learned in your career?
Oh, that's a tough one. I would say just dealing with the unexpected, with staff turnover at different times, and the around COVID, post-COVID world was a wacky time to be a
Sure
business
was.
owner. It's not just dentists that had a hard time. I can tell you other small professional practices had challenges too. Just being fluid and being able to go with the
Mhm.
flow, the
Yeah.
unexpected. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. All right. And a last question. If you had unlimited resources, what's one big idea you'd bring to life?
I'd like to have more just personal in the room interaction with dentists and my dental people and my crew. And a lot
Mm,
of people that do Cs and do a good job with that, but something that we're actually starting to think about doing and rolling out early stages. I
mhm.
love connecting with people. Like we said at the outset, it was great to meet you in person.
Yeah.
There's no substitute for that. I enjoy that. And the ability to get in front of people and help them in ways that are impactful to help them with their career, and then is just gives us joy and purpose that makes practicing the professional law that much more exciting.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I can't agree with you more. There is just as great as Zoom is, and I know you and I spend a lot of time in front of screens. There is nothing better. I'm a hugger. There's nothing better than putting your arms around somebody and having a real face-to-face conversation. So I love
Yep.
that. Again, thank you so much for spending your afternoon with me. You dropped some great pearls throughout this whole podcast. And until next time, all right?
Thanks, Jill.
See ya.